All right. Welcome to the very first episode of Chargerscast. I am Kirk Brewer, and I think it's appropriate that the first episode of Chargerscast is on January 1st, 2024. It feels like a new beginning in so many ways for us Chargers fans. It's not just a new year, but there's so much to be looking forward to in 2024, and we're going to get into it in this very first episode. But first, what is Chargerscast? Chargerscast is a fan-based podcast about everything Los Angeles, formerly San Diego Chargers. It's for fans, by fans. It's a year-round podcast covering every aspect of the team. In-season game analysis and summaries, talking about coaching, decisions, play calling, talk about the players, front office, postseason, off-season, draft, talk about preseason, and much, much more. Basically everything Chargers. So why is Chargerscast here? And why am I doing this? I get it. There's so much content out there. Will one more podcast really make a difference? Will it even be relevant? That's a great question. I've asked myself that question. The Chargers organization themselves, they do a great job of getting content out to us fans. I think their social media team's probably by far the best in the league as well. But keep in mind, that content is always coming from the team. So it's team oriented. They may not be putting out information internally that we as fans may be interested in, but it's always coming from the team's perspective. So we got to keep that in mind. And then there's plenty of insiders and former players that are out there providing content, doing podcasts and things like that. You've got insiders like Rich Eisen. I mean, I love his show. It's awesome. And the content that he provides is incredible, and the insight. We've got Colin Cowherd. Love his podcast. And then some of my favorites, Matt Money, DJ, Chris Hyrie. Those guys are awesome and love everything they do as well. And they really provide really good insight based from, their perspective and their position, what's going on with the team. So that's indispensable. And, by no means are what we are doing intended to circumvent any of that. It's really meant to be additive. Again, we're for fans, by fans. But then we've got the amateur podcasters, the fan podcasters. And there's a lot of websites out there written by, amateur journalists, so to speak. There's a lot of content there. Some of it's really, really good. And I love it, and I consume it voraciously as an adamant Chargers fan. But some of it is not so good. And most of these podcasters, this is kind of really where it comes in, why Chargerscast even exists. Most of these podcasters, and the guys writing these articles, they are so young. I mean, literally, not to bash on youth. I wish I was younger, but they are so young. Literally, these people have never seen a quarterback under center for the Los Angeles Chargers, or God forbid, the San Diego Chargers, other than Phillip Rivers and Justin Herbert. And now recently, obviously, Easton Stick, which I love Easton Stick. That can be a whole nother podcast. Love a kid, and he's always been a winner. And it's nice to see him getting his chance. But these people turning out this content literally have never seen a quarterback under center other than Phillip Rivers and Justin Herbert as starting franchise quarterbacks. And let me tell you, from a longstanding fan, you've never lived through being a Chargers fan unless you've lived through a season of Craig Wellahan or Moses Marino, man. I mean, well, I'll just leave it at that for the intro to why Chargerscast. But I'm here for a reason, and I believe I've got something to add. So, with all this content, I still believe there's a missing perspective. And I think that missing perspective is coming from a lifelong fan who has actually lived through many decades of being a Chargers fan. The good, the bad, the ugly, the heartbreak. Like I said, if you don't even know who Craig Wellahan is, go look the guy up. Okay, if you haven't lived through a season with Craig Wellahan as your starting quarterback, no offense, Craig, but you weren't Phillip Rivers or Stan Humphries or many others like Danny Fouts. But so having been a Chargers fan for as many years as I have, I think I've got a unique perspective that I can put what's happening today in a historical perspective of decades, literally going back decades. As a San Diego native, as a teenager, I became a fan in 1978. I was 2 years old. I was really as a teenager in 1978. And it doesn't seem like there's anybody out there today providing relevant content coming from 45 plus years of historical context. And I think there's value in that. So I hope you do as well, because that's why Chargerscast is going to exist, is I think I've got a little bit different perspective to add with 45 years of Chargers history and the highs and lows and the heartbreak and the perspective that's come with that. And kind of let me put that in a little bit of perspective for you. 1978. Okay, I'm 12 going on 13, I think. Okay, so just becoming aware of football. I had been a Pittsburgh Steelers fan prior to that. Please don't hold it against me. I was a kid, and the Steelers were, it was either them or the Cowboys back then. They were the dominant teams. 1978, I think Pittsburgh was winning their third Super Bowl against the Cowboys. 79, I think they won their fourth one against the Rams, if I'm not mistaken. But as a San Diego native, in 1978, some things went down in San Diego that got my attention as a naive football fan who was interested in rooting for a winner. Let me outline this for you. Gene Klein was still the majority owner of the Chargers. Tommy Prothro was entering his fifth season as a losing head coach. Now, dude, Tommy Prothro, is there a better name for either a quarterback or a head coach? He earned a couple seasons worth of losing just based on that last name alone. But the Chargers were not winning under Tommy Prothro. And the roster was actually pretty loaded. We had some killer drafts, okay? We had Louis Kelcher, Fred Dean, Charlie Joyner. Dan Fouts was drafted in 73, and he was in and out of the lineup. If you remember, we had Johnny U right around that time. A washed-up Johnny U with no knees, by the way. We had Big Ed White at guard, Don Masick, Russ Washington, Leroy Jones, Gary Big Hands Johnson, Woodrow Lowe, Pete Shaw. Fred Dean. We had talent on this team, and we were losing, okay? John Jefferson was our first-round pick in 1978 out of ASU, okay? 1978, the Chargers start 1-3. Prothro gets fired, and they hire this mad scientist offensive guru named Don Coryell. Okay, a little history on Coryell prior to 78. He had been the coach of San Diego State prior and turned them into an offensive juggernaut. Anybody remember the name Brian Sipe? If not, go Google it. Sipe. Brian Sipe. And then Don Coryell went on to coach Jim Hart and the St. Louis Cardinals, not St. Louis Rams, the St. Louis Cardinals that are now the Arizona Cardinals, to multiple winning seasons and put Jim Hart on the map as a quarterback to be reckoned with. So Chargers 1-3, fire pro throw, bring in Coryell. Rest of the season, Coryell goes 8-4. 8-4. John Jefferson put up the first of 3 consecutive 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Okay? The next year, in 79, we draft Kellen Winslow, and we go 12-4. All right? Eric Coryell is now born, all from a mid-season coaching change that included hiring a proven, not some nobody, a proven winner as a head coach. And not just a winner, but a leader of men. And Coryell had proven that based on years of background of leading teams. So let's kind of step back again, big picture here. Why am I doing Chargerscast? And why now? Will anybody ever even watch this thing? Will it move the needle? I don't know. As a longtime Chargers fan, I've wanted to do a Chargers podcast for a very long time. And like most people, I think about it, thought about it, and procrastinated. Got a job, got hobbies, got activities, got all kinds of stuff going on, and never dove into it. Okay. I chose to start doing it now because now kind of has that feeling again, like something big's about to happen for the Chargers. And so I figured if I do it, it's kind of now or never. Do it now or just don't do it. And so with the midseason firing of Staley and Telesco, feels like we're at a super important turning point for the team. And I think Chargerscast is something that this is the time to do it. It's January 1st, 2024, turning a new leaf with the team. And I honestly think we have an opportunity here that the team is going to make some critical hires that are going to move the Chargers into relevance for years to come. And I would like to be there to add my 2 cents with Chargerscast and get your 2 cents during the course of this. So that's why we're here. I have no idea if one person will watch 1 minute of one episode of these things, but I believe I have a perspective to add that'll be of interest to some fans after 45 years of following this team. So I'm launching Chargerscast, and if nothing else, it'll give me a chance to vent when I have something to say, or the Chargers and the Spanoses do something to frustrate me like they have for decades to no end. So it'll definitely be a place for that. And, somebody actually ends up watching this thing and they want to give some, comments or have questions. This is really for fans. It's by a fan for fans. So I would love to have the opportunity to field questions, answer them here in the podcast. Who knows in the future, maybe we'll actually have some other fans on live with me. If we get any kind of momentum whatsoever, maybe we'll have some cool special guests on, some former players, some things like that would be super cool, that we can literally bring this down to the street level, to the fan level, and bring the Chargers information and perspective literally to the fan level. So that's why I'm doing it. I hope there's somebody out there who's going to ultimately watch this, and maybe more than one or two people. So whoever's watching this right now, thank you. I really appreciate it. Do me a favor, like and subscribe, and come back for all future episodes. I will try and get episodes about once a week during the season, I think is probably appropriate. Maybe more depending on some news. During the off season, probably every 1 to 2 weeks, depending on news and any events that might warrant. So let's get into the actual episode. All right. We got stuff going on, man. Today is New Year's Day, January 1st, 2024. Seems fitting to launch Chargerscast on January 1st of 2024. Again, like I said, it feels like we've got some new beginnings, and it feels like a new beginning for the Chargers. Also today, the Rose Bowl was played in Pasadena. Michigan won that game in overtime. We'll talk more about that later. But I think it's relevant. Okay. So let's go get going. 2 weeks ago, on Friday, December 15th, after a complete blowout loss to division rival Raiders, who, by the way, were playing a rookie backup quarterback, no less, the Chargers got humiliated on Thursday night prime time. I mean, we got spanked. It was, I forget the score now. It was like 63-21. We got beat by 42 points. It was like 42-0 at halftime or something. I mean, it was ridiculous. The Spanoses were finally able to see, I think, what the rest of us were able to see during that game. That Brandon Staley was not the right man to lead this team. And you can say what you want about Brandon Staley. I think he's a really nice guy. I actually like him a lot. And I can draw some analogies going back to Mike Riley. To me, he was a Mike Riley hire. We can talk about that later. But same kind of guy. I liked him a lot. Really nice guy. I don't think he was a leader of men. I think he thought he was a leader of men, but clearly he was not. And so the Spanoses, not only did they fire head coach Brandon Staley that next Friday morning, they also let Tom Telesco go. And at first I was a little surprised, and I thought about it. I went, no, that was a necessity. And so I was really pleased to hear that they cleaned house. Again, it was clear that Staley wasn't the leader of this team. It was clear to me that Telesco, he had failed on 3 head coaching hires. And while on paper it looks like he'd built a super talented roster, he'd had his fair share of misses. He pushed all his chips to the center of the table this season, including the Brandon Staley chip. He went all in and he failed. So it makes sense, if we're going to do this right, we needed to clean house, and that included the GM. To me, it should have never gotten this far. Okay. I think anybody who follows the Chargers with any level of passion knows that Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley should have been fired the moment they stepped off the plane after that debacle of a playoff loss that was last season, when we just gave up, literally gave up after a 27-0 lead against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You should not have needed any more proof than that team was not coached well and not able to play for that head coach, and clearly play for each other, quite frankly, which starts with the head coach. And so it should have never gotten this far. But, here we are now. We've lost an entire season. We wasted another year of Justin Herbert's career. Let's hope he has a very long one like Phillip did. And so at the end of the day, it's just seasoning for him, a maturation process. But nonetheless, we've wasted the 2023 season because they didn't take care of business after that playoff loss last season. Now, that may ultimately come back and be a win-win for us that they didn't as far as timing goes. Time will tell on that. But they probably shouldn't have wasted the 2023 season, not knowing maybe how things will work out this year. Okay. But at this point, what's done is done. I'm really thankful that the Spanos has finally realized what needed to be done and took action. So now the team can move forward. And like I said, in the grand scheme of things, the timing, well, it may have ultimately, we'll see. It may have ultimately worked out in our favor. We'll see. So where do we sit today? At the time of the firing on December 15th, there were still 3 weeks left in the regular season. Okay. So far, the team stayed the course. They appointed Giff Smith, who I believe was the linebackers coach. They promoted him to interim head coach. Justin was hurt, and so we've got Easton Stick, our backup quarterback, as our starting quarterback. And the Chargers have pretty much stayed the course, despite a spirited game. The first game after Staley's firing against the Buffalo Bills on Saturday night, which we lost that by a walk-off field goal, I believe. The Chargers have lost the next 2 games. So this past weekend we lost against the Denver Broncos, and here we sit at 5-11. We got 1 game remaining. That's next week against the Kansas City Chiefs, which it absolutely kills me to say this, who have clinched just this weekend their 8th consecutive AFC West title. Are you effing kidding me? 8 in a row? I don't think we did that back in LT's heyday when we were stomping the AFC West. I think we did 7 maybe. I'll have to go back and check. I know we beat the Raiders, swept them 7 years straight. Maybe we didn't win 7 AFC West titles. Maybe it was only 4 or 5, but yeah. So depending on how the next few weeks shape out, or the next week, pardon me, not the next few, 1 more week, the Chiefs got nothing to play for. Okay, their seating's set. So will they start the Kelseys and the Pachecos and obviously the Mahomes? Will they even put an effort up against us? I do not know. But depending on how that game shakes out, and a couple of the games for the folks who have losing records right around us, we are going to be drafting somewhere between the number 4 overall and the number 8 overall. I think 4 is the best we can get. 8's the worst we can get. And we're currently sitting at 6. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the imminent hires coming for head coach and GM. The rest of the stuff will fall out as far as coordinators and position coaches once we know those 2 positions are taken care of. John Spanos came out last week, and I found it interesting that it was John and not Dean. He came out last week and he said they will leave no stone unturned in their coaching hire, search, and ultimate hire, and that money/salary will not be a limiting factor in their next head coaching hire. Great words, something I think all of us want to hear. Everybody talks about the Chargers being cheap, and I think you can make a case at times they do choose to be cheap in some places, but I think that's a stereotype that's not always accurate. They've paid the Phillip Riverses and the LaDainian Tomlinses and the Antonio Gateses, and they've paid players over the years. They have made a few poor decisions that I don't think came down to money. In most cases, the one I can remember being money related was VJ. He wanted more money than Chargers were willing to give him, and he went to Tampa Bay and got $55,555,000. It was a weird thing. 55, for 5 years, I think, with them. And the Chargers weren't willing to pay him that. But other than that, I think the guys who needed to get paid got paid. Weddle's situation was a whole nother deal. He tried to leapfrog Phillip Rivers as far as who got signed first when he knew Phillip had to be re-signed, and he kind of whined, and Chargers don't like players whining to the media. So that's why the whole Weddle fallout came. But it was really nice to hear John Spanos say that, and I think it's interesting that it was John. I think he's much more active in the team these days, and I think he has much more say in a lot of the decision making. I think the team is going to be his legacy going forward. And I think this hire is going to reflect that. So that makes me very optimistic. Chargers, they're now in the LA market. So you can't dink around like sleepy little San Diego market. Okay. So they're in the LA market. That's a big draw for anybody who cares about endorsements and media and all that. Let's face it, being a San Diego native myself, Southern California is a really nice place to live from a weather perspective and a lifestyle perspective. We can talk about all the other stuff that comes along with living in California. But it's a very beautiful place to live. Chargers got a stud franchise quarterback in Herbert, who's signed for the long haul. His finger should repair just fine, and he should be full strength next season. They better put a freaking line around him. Our line has not played good this season, so they better protect that guy. They play in the best stadium in the entire league. SoFi Stadium is spectacular. They're opening a brand new training facility in El Segundo. I forget the numbers on what they spent on that thing, but it's state of the art. It's absolutely going to be the envy of the league. Still got a lot of talent under contract. We got a lot of people becoming free agents in the off season, but we still got a lot of talent under contract. Some of those contracts are going to need to be renegotiated because now we're probably about $35 million over the cap for next season because we let Sebastian Joseph Day, we cut him, which is going to save us about seven and a half, I think. We were about 42.5 over. So there's some challenges there regarding the roster, free agency, and the salary cap. But all in all, Chargers by far have the most attractive head coaching / GM vacancy in the league. By far. So I think that's going to serve them very, very well. I'd like to go on the record right now and just let you guys all know where I stand from a team building perspective. I believe the head coach, and it's not even close, I believe the head coach is the most important person on the team, period. Most important. There are other important positions. General managers, clearly important. Your quarterback's clearly important. But the most important position on the team is the head coach. A great head coach gets the most out of his players, whether it's top-tier talent, mid-level talent, or, all that fill the back end of the roster talent. And so without a good head coach, your team is just not going to be able to perform at their peak capabilities, period. And history's proven that out, whether it's with the Chargers or other teams. Top head coaches get the most out of their teams. If it's a mediocre team, they overperform. If it's a top-tier team, they reach spectacular heights. And history's proven that out. And we can kind of take a look at the Chargers' history and kind of go over that. Let me see if I can share my screen here. All right, hopefully you guys can see this. But, Chargers have been around for like 63 years, okay? They've had 17 head coaches, and only 4 of those would I deem as truly successful head coaches. And those 4 coaches cover little less than half of the Chargers' history. Okay. We got Sid Gilman. Okay, Gilman's the man, right? Gilman, this guy is the father of the modern passing game. Okay, the Chargers had him for 11 seasons. Look at that record. They won the AFL championship. Was it Super Bowl? No, not Super Bowl. The AFL championship in like 1960. Okay. So what a way to start your franchise. And then you go through how many years of mediocrity. I don't even remember Waller 1 or Waller 2. Look at Tommy Prothro. Okay, great name, not a great coach. And so it wasn't until 1978, like I said, mid-season after Game 4, that we then get Don Coryell. And we've got Coryell for basically 10 years. The guy's a legend. It's absolutely criminal that he did not get in the Hall of Fame while he was still alive. Don't even get me going on that. Coryell was a leader. He was a hard-nosed leader who demanded excellence from his players. And he was also an innovator. He was an offensive innovator. He reinvented the forward passing game. If Sid Gilman invented it, Coryell reinvented it. And it took defenses years to catch up to the Eric Coryell offense. And then we go through mediocrity again. Al Saunders, nice guy, not a good head coach. Dan Henning, nice guy, not a good head coach. Okay. And then finally, 1984, I think it was the Chargers. It was during Coryell. Chargers were sold to the Spanoses. Coryell was let go eventually. We went through these couple coaches here, and it wasn't until the Chargers brought in Bobby Beathard from the Washington Redskins and hired Bobby Ross as their head coach in 92 that all of a sudden we saw the team turn around again. What was Bobby Ross's formula? Bobby Ross was a leader of men first and foremost. Now, his playing style wasn't like Coryell or Sid Gilman. Not that he didn't throw the ball, but he was ground and pound, physical first, and then throw the ball. So use the run to set up the pass, not use the pass to set up the run. Took the Chargers to their only Super Bowl, Super Bowl 29. Now we got smoked by Steve Young and the Niners. That wasn't a very good day. But that team dramatically overperformed. Way overperformed. Bobby Ross got the most out of what I would deem a lot of mediocre talent. Not the Junior Seau of the world. Rodney Harrison wasn't starting that season. He was still a rook. But the Stan Humphries, the Mark Says, the Tony Martins, the Natron Means, the Kurt Gibsons, that team went to the Super Bowl. Okay. That was like Bobby Ross willed that team to the Super Bowl. Okay. And then falling out between Beathard and ownership and Bobby Ross. And we go through mediocrity with Kevin Gilbride. June Jones. I actually liked June Jones. I had hoped that they would keep him. But even though I think they offered him the job, he ended up going to the University of Hawaii. And who couldn't blame him? And after that, I think he retired. And then we hire Mike Riley from University of Oregon. And super nice guy, just in way over his head. Way over his head. Like I said, I kind of equate Mike Riley to Brandon Staley. When Staley got hired, that's who I thought of. You can see his record, 14-34. Absolutely abysmal. But we corrected the ship and we hired Marty Schottenheimer, who was a proven winner at Cleveland, proven winner in Kansas City. And Marty came in and absolutely changed the culture. Again, hard-nosed leader of men, ground and pound physical style. He liked to run the ball power left, power left, power left. And when you got a guy like LT and you have the left side of the line like we had with Marcus McNeil, Chris Dealman, and Nick Hardwick, you can get away with that. And it was a winning formula. LT's record still has not been broken for most rushing touchdowns in a season. So then after that, the whole Norv Turner hiring, still not a fan of that. I like Norv, thinks he's a good guy, good offensive coordinator. Shouldn't have been head coach. His record belies the lack of success we really had. That team should have gone to several Super Bowls, and I think we didn't go to several Super Bowls because of Norv, not in spite of Norv. So, and then Mike McCoy. I mean, please give me a break. I will never get seared out of my head the guy kneeling down on the sidelines with his hand in his head like he's going to cry because the Chargers keep stinking it up. And he knows he's going to get fired because he can't get his team to play. Way over his head. And so he gets 3 seasons, and we move on to Anthony Lynn. By the way, Mike McCoy was Telesco's first hire. Anthony Lynn, I don't know. I think maybe if they'd stuck with him longer, he might have gotten into a groove. But I think Anthony was in over his head. He should have started Justin right away. And he didn't. And then he was slow to name Justin the starter. His in-game decisions weren't always the best. Young Wei Koo, anybody remember that guy? They decided to go with him over the kicker at the time. And he stunk it up for several games to let him go. And now the guy's turned out to be a great kicker. So anyway, and then Staley. I'm not going to belabor Staley. He should have been gone after the Jacksonville game, and he wasn't. But my point here is if the Chargers aren't going to keep repeating the same mistakes, number one, you cannot go out and get an unproven coach. Okay? You need to do what KC did. Okay, they went out and got freaking Andy Reid. Okay, that guy was a proven winner, and he has dominated the AFC West 8 years in a row, winning the title for the division. Okay, we need to repeat that formula with a Marty, a Bobby Ross, a Don Coryell. We need to go get a proven winner. I don't care if he's hard to work with, prima donna, whatever the case may be. You need to go get a proven winner who's a leader of men. Okay, so where do we go? If you're going to compete in LA, you got to put a winning product on the field, period. And to do that, you need to hire a head coach first, not a GM. Hire the head coach first. It's a proven winner and a proven leader. And that leaves us a pretty short list of people as far as my count goes. Any of the candidates on this list, they're not going to come cheap. Pretty much everyone, with an exception or two, comes with strong personality. And in my history of watching this stuff, the stronger the personality, usually the better coach. Okay, so if their personalities are less strong, they may not get results, as good of results as fast. The stronger personality coaches usually get results pretty freaking quick. But all the candidates on this list, I believe, will put a winner on the field. They'll put butts in the seats, and they will make the Chargers relevant in the LA market for years to come. Okay, so here's my list. This first one, it's the sexy pick. It's the in vogue pick. Everybody's talking about it. But I believe it's the right pick. So I don't care if it's a bandwagon pick. I don't care if it's a sexy pick. Whatever. I think it's the right pick. And this is why I think maybe not firing Staley at the end of last season may end up working out for us from a timing perspective. And this pick's Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh. Okay. He's my number one pick. This guy's got history with the Chargers, right? He finished his last 2 years of his career for the Chargers. He started his coaching career at USD and turned them into a Division III powerhouse. Okay, they won. I think they maybe lost like 3 games his entire history there. And then he coached the Cardinals, the Stanford Cardinal, and killed it there. I think he had a stint as an assistant coach with the Raiders, and then went on to be the head coach of an abysmal San Francisco 49ers team, who he took to 3 straight NFC championships and a Super Bowl. Lost to his brother, by the way, in the Super Bowl. That I suspect that's eating on him, and he's going to want to go back and fix that. So I suspect he's probably going to want to get back in the NFL pretty soon. By the way, Harbaugh just won over Alabama today, and he's going to the national championship game next week. So that should be interesting. Okay, but he's got history with Chargers. He's got history in California. And so I think there's a really good fit there. I think this is the right guy at the right time for the job. And if it's me, I would sell out for this hire. I would push all my chips to the center of the table and go after this hire. So because of that, probably won't happen, and I'll be a little heartbroken. But we'll just see how it plays out. The next guy I've got on my list here, and these aren't necessarily after this in any particular order, but is Dan Quinn, the current defensive coordinator at Dallas. He's a former head coach. He took Atlanta to a Super Bowl. He's not a sexy pick. He's definitely not my favorite pick, but I think he's a solid pick that'd be hard to complain about when you look at kind of the other possibilities on the list. I'm not necessarily sold on Kellen Moore as our OC. I'm not real impressed so far with his play calling and Justin's performance under him. I don't think Justin's reading defenses very well under him, and definitely not reading blitz packages very well under him. He could use Phillip Rivers' SUV and film study techniques to get a little bit better at that. And so the reason I mention that is if Quinn were to come over as head coach, I believe he would have a higher probability of retaining Kellen Moore as the OC. And I think that's a double-edged sword. I'm not sold on Kellen Moore, but I do think from a continuity standpoint, that could be good for Herbert. So there's that. He probably ain't going to cost as much money. Like I said, it's not the sexiest pick, but I think it's solid. Okay. And then there's Bill Belichick. People have been kicking Bill Belichick around. People are speculating that he and the Pats are going to part ways this offseason. If they do part ways, he's definitely a possibility. He's not my guy. He's not my choice. I don't feel passionate about him coming to coach the Chargers at all. In fact, I probably feel a little betrayal a little bit, maybe. And we can talk to Marlon McCree about that betrayal. But it would be weird to see Belichick on the sidelines for the Chargers. But he's a proven leader and he's a proven winner. So he meets that. I definitely wouldn't give up draft picks for the dude. If Kraft is looking to, cash in and part ways, it's like, nah, you either let him go or you don't, and then we'll evaluate whether we want him or not. My other biggest thing with him is, quite frankly, he's too old. He's like 72. So what are we going to get? 2 years, maybe 3 out of the guy at best. My preference is a proven leader who's, as a minimum, can be with the team, for the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years, right? So we can kind of build a legacy and a dynasty with continuity. So that's kind of my feelings on Belichick. Now, there's another guy who's been kicked around, his current head coach, that people are speculating might be cut loose or have an amicable parting of ways, and that's Mike Tomlin, head coach of the Steelers. That could be interesting. I've always been a fan of his, not a passionate fan, but I respect how he approaches leading his players, leading his team. Very even-keeled dude. I could get behind that hire. If Harbaugh's not our guy, I could get behind that. Now, I don't know if I'd give up picks again. If Pittsburgh wants picks to get rid of the guy, I don't know if I'd give up picks for him. But if we don't have a chance at Harbaugh for any reason, he just decides to go take his money and take the new contract at Michigan, and Tomlin does become available, I could get behind that one. I would like that. That would be a great pick, I think. And then he can bring in the coordinators and set up his structure. And I think the Chargers would benefit from that. And I think they'd benefit from having somebody like him at the helm for the next 7 to 10 years. Now, here's a couple dark horse picks for you. These are left field dark horse picks. So my number one dark horse that may not be anybody's radar screen. Well, they may now because I think they mentioned it on TV last weekend, Sunday Night Football. Tony Dungy. Yeah, Tony Dungy. I said it. If Dungy were to come out of retirement, I think he'd bring instant credibility to the Chargers. He's a proven winner, proven leader, even keel, steady Eddie kind of dude. So he'd be a really nice stabilizing force for the organization. You know what you're getting, so if the first season or two are not as glamorous as you'd expect him to be, you know that he's got a winning formula. The thing I don't like about Tony Dungy is I'm not a fan of Bill Polian. That's where Telesco came from. And by the way, Telesco did a pretty decent job, but I'm not a fan of Polian. And so I wouldn't want to see any Polian disciples weasel their way into our organization, with Dungy coming in first and then maybe bringing in one of his guys as player personnel. So that's kind of my thought there on Dungy as a dark horse. And then this dark horse, don't give me too much shit. I'm probably going to hear it for this one. But John Gruden. Yeah, I said it. Chucky. Hear me out. Okay. I know all the dust hasn't settled yet on the whole league thing, but the league does not want that lawsuit of Gruden's to see the light of day. Okay, and Gruden's very likely to win his case to where they're going to have to go to court, not arbitration, and then the league's going to be subject to discovery. And they don't want their dirty laundry to get aired as to why only Gruden's emails got released and nobody else's out of hundreds of thousands of emails out of the Washington Redskins organization. So I think that thing's going to get buried between now and next season. And so I think Gruden could be a possibility. Gruden's a great coach. We could debate that, but I would say Gruden's a great coach. He's a proven leader. He's a proven winner. He's a quarterback whisperer. Herbert could benefit from being tied to the hip to a John Gruden for the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Okay. Plus, do you not think Gruden's going to be motivated as hell to stick it to the Raiders every chance he gets? Not to mention the rest of the AFC West. Obviously he's got history there. He's probably going to want to stick it to Goodell too. So there's that. And then kind of last but not least, I suspect Gruden could bring over some wayward LA Raiders fans into the LA Chargers fan base if Gruden were to now head up the Los Angeles Chargers. And so that's my other dark horse. And I know that's a left fielder, but wouldn't that be interesting? And it sure would be a media bonanza and bring a lot of attention to the Chargers. And then if Gruden actually gets that team motivated to run through brick walls for him, like I think he would, that could be pretty cool. So who will it be? Only time will tell. But I'm optimistic. Like I said earlier, the fact that I think John Spanos is much more actively involved in this decision than he would have been historically, to the point where maybe he's 50-50 with his dad. I think that bodes well for us. I think he's motivated to make this team a winner and start building a legacy in LA since the move. The dust has settled from the move. They're in SoFi. They've got Justin. Now is the time. It's not 5 years from now. It's now. He wants a winner in LA, and I believe he believes the time is now to start building that legacy. Feels like a new beginning for the Chargers. It really does. And that, I think, comes with John. It comes with finally making a definitive move and getting rid of both Staley and Telesco. And in my 45 years of watching this team, there's that feeling in the air, man, that this offseason is going to be huge for the future of the Chargers. I can say truly as a longtime fan of the Chargers, you truly have not endured as a Chargers fan unless you've witnessed a season with Craig Willihan or Moses Marino under center. Or if you thought, Billy Joe Tolliver, John Freeze, Jim McMahon, or Mark Malone was going to be the savior of our franchise. Okay. We've got this kid. We've been blessed to go from Doug Flutie, which, by the way, I could do a whole episode on what Doug Flutie meant to this franchise. While we were out in the quarterback desert, no quarterbacks, to go to Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers and now Justin Herbert. Okay, we are in the quarterback promised land, and that can't be wasted. And so we're at a turning point, an inflection for the team. I can feel it after 45 years of watching this team, and I'm super excited to see how this offseason shapes up. And I've got trust that John and Dean are going to right this ship with this next hire. So regarding the GM hire, I think I already mentioned this. I don't think they should hire the GM first. This is a perfect opportunity to get the head coach hired first. And depending on who they hired, that head coach is probably going to want to say and who they're going to be working with on the player personnel side. And so don't limit yourself by going GM first, and don't mess with the parallel path thing. Go find your coach, go find your leader of men, go find the person who's going to head up your organization and get your players all lined up, and then work with that coach to find out who they would like to work with, who they believe in, who has a similar philosophy as far as player personnel. And by the way, I'll just say this too regarding hardball. Coming out of 10 years now of college ball, he's going to be Johnny on the spot, having gone through recruiting, knowing things about these players. Again, just a whole nother reason why I think he is a perfect fit, because he's got both sides, the pro and the college game, and coming freshly out of the college game, understanding the college players. So I think that's going to bode very, very well if they can land Harbaugh. So, either way, these next hires, the coach and the GM, are going to be huge. We will continue to monitor that, and I hope you guys will continue to tune in. So that's it for the day. That's it for the first episode of Chargerscast. I hope it wasn't too wonky, and I hope I didn't babble too much. But hopefully that gives you a perspective of where I'm coming from and what I want to bring to the table as far as talking about our beloved Chargers. So there's a lot more to discuss in upcoming episodes, more on the coach and the GM hires, this final game and our ultimate draft position, roster, free agency, draft, salary cap issues, and much, much more. So please like and subscribe down below. Leave comments, questions. Please be nice. Keep the hating to a minimum. But if you do have questions or comments, please leave them. I'd love to check them out. And hopefully I can answer a few in the next episode. So thanks once again for joining Chargerscast. And we will catch you next time.